Hello everyone, I'm Chris, and this is a full recap of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory released in 2005. If you end up enjoying this video and want to see more from us, then make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to know anytime we upload a new video. 34 years following the release of the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in 1971, and in response to the film having become a hit on TV and home video throughout the 80s and 90s, Warner Brothers decided to produce a remake in 2005 titled after the original 1964 novel written by Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which went on to be a huge success and one of the biggest films of the year, with it bringing in $206 million domestically, the seventh most of any film that year, and $474 million worldwide, the eighth most of any film that year. Now, 18 years later, another Willy Wonka project will be releasing in theaters December 15th titled Wonka, and will actually be serving as a prequel to the 1971 Wonka film. So, before the new movie, we decided to take a look at the two previous Wonka appearances on the big screen, beginning with a recap of the 1971 film that we released a few days ago, which is linked in the description below, and continuing today with our recap of the 2005 journey to Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. The movie opens on an ordinary boy named Charlie Bucket as he rushes home to join his mother, father, and his bedridden grandparents, Grandpa George, Grandma Georgina, Grandma Josephine, and Grandpa Joe for their usual dinner of cabbage soup, since they can't afford to eat much else. Just before dinner, though, Charlie's father hands him a small gift from his job at the local toothpaste factory, where he places caps on the toothpaste tubes and sometimes comes across some strangely built ones, a few of which he's brought home for Charlie so he can put the finishing touches on his diorama of Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory, where his Grandpa Joe actually used to work. Joe reveals that he'd begun working for Wonka 20 years ago, back when he had only a single store on Cherry Street. But 5 years later, Wonka decided to build the largest chocolate factory in history, which, along with the success of his chocolate and candy recipes, began to make all the other chocolate makers jealous. So to combat Wonka's success, these rival chocolate makers sent spies to steal his secret recipes, eventually leading Wonka to shockingly send all of his workers home and close the chocolate factory forever. It didn't actually stay closed forever though, as it somewhat recently reopened, but this unfortunately didn't result in any of his employees being brought back, as he's been able to run his factory without them. A mystery that no one's been able to solve, since nothing ever comes in or out of the factory other than the candy itself. The day following this discussion though, it's suddenly announced to the world that Willy Wonka will actually be allowing 5 children to enter his factory, with those being the first 5 children to find the 5 golden tickets he's packaged inside Wonka bars. And he also promises that one of these children shall receive a special prize beyond anything they could ever imagine. Charlie and his family unfortunately only have enough for a single bar though, which they give to Charlie for his birthday. And although he and Grandpa Joe have high hopes that he'll be one of the lucky winners, upon opening it, he's disappointed to find just the chocolate inside. Over the next few weeks, 4 of the 5 tickets are eventually found, with the first found by an overweight boy with a hobby for eating, Augustus Gloop from Dusseldorf, Germany. The second found by Veruca Salt, a very spoiled English girl. The third found by Violet Beauregard, a gum-chewing enthusiast and winner of 263 medals and trophies. And the fourth being found by video game addict Mike TV. With the 5th ticket still yet to be found, Grandpa Joe decides to give his last quarter to Charlie so they can try again. But unfortunately, there's once again just the chocolate inside. And later, Charlie overhears that someone's finally found the golden ticket in Russia. Just moments before, he himself stumbles upon a $10 bill lying in the snow on the ground. Still, Charlie decides to use it to buy a Wonka Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mellow Delight bar, and while making the transaction, he sees on the newspaper that the 5th ticket found in Russia was actually a fake, meaning the real one's still out there. So he opens up his Wonka bar, and it just so happens to contain the real final golden ticket, which the surrounding customers attempt to buy from him, but the shop owner urges him to run home with it. So he does. Upon arriving home, he immediately shows his ticket to Grandpa Joe, which miraculously prompts him to suddenly spring to his feet in excitement, and he suggests to the rest of the family that he be the one to join Charlie on his trip to the factory, and they agree. Charlie's unsure if they should even go though, since they could probably sell the ticket for a sizable amount of money, but he's encouraged to make the trip by Grandpa George. So the following day, he and Joe head over to and enter the gates of Wonka's factory, alongside the other 4 kids and their guardians. And once having entered the gates, the group is welcomed by a musical puppet performance that quickly breaks down when the show's fireworks set some of the puppets on fire. Mr. Willy Wonka himself then arrives to begin the tour, with their first stop being the factory's chocolate room, where Wonka's chocolate river and waterfall that mixes the chocolate are located. And he also reveals that just about everything in this room is edible. So everyone begins exploring and eating all the delicious candies and desserts the room has to offer, before eventually noticing little humans working there, who Wonka explains are actually Oompa Loompas from Loopaland, a land full of thick jungles infested by the most dangerous beasts in the world that Wonka had originally traveled to in search of new exotic flavors of candy, but instead came across the Oompa Loompas, who he quickly learned loved cocoa beans. But unfortunately in Loopaland they were very hard to find, so Wonka offered to move them to his factory and give them as many cocoa beans as they'd like in exchange for their help in making his chocolate, and they agreed. Meanwhile, Augustus, who had been drinking from Wonka's chocolate river, despite Wonka ordering him not to, suddenly falls in, and is eventually sucked into a pipe that, as the Oompa Loompas break out into a song and dance about the importance of not being greedy, shoots him up to the fudge room. So Wonka calls over an Oompa Loompa to bring Augustus's mother there in order to find him. The tour then continues on soon after this, with Wonka leading the group onto his candy boat to travel down the chocolate river, during which the topic of childhood is brought up, with Charlie asking Wonka if he remembers what it was like being a kid, prompting him to flash back to a depressing Halloween memory when he, having just arrived home from trick-or-treating, was forced by his father, the city's most famous dentist, Wilbur Wonka, to throw away all the candy he'd collected. He's eventually snapped out of this flashback though, as they make their way through a tunnel to the inventing room, where Wonka presents them with a few of his newest inventions, including his everlasting gobstoppers that never get smaller no matter how long you suck on them, his hair toffee that can help your hair grow quickly after eating it, and a piece of gum that resembles the flavor of a 3-course meal, although that one he claims is still a work in progress. Despite this, Violet decides to snatch the piece of gum and begin chewing away, describing the multiple flavors before arriving at the meal's 3rd course, the blueberry pie, but we soon see that that's the part Wonka was struggling with, as she begins turning into a literal blueberry, while the Oompa Loompas once again break out into song, this time about the importance of good manners, before then rolling her down to the juicing room with her mother, so she can be squeezed back to normal before she explodes. The remainder of the group, meanwhile, continues on with the tour, although it's once again interrupted when another of Charlie's questions bring Wonka back to a haunting memory, as after Charlie asks him about his first time eating candy, we see a young Willy, while cleaning up the ashes of the candy his father had tossed into the fireplace, find one chocolate still completely intact, so he ate it and immediately fell in love with candy as a result. Back in the present, Wonka next brings them to his nut sorting room, inside of which he reveals to be using specially trained squirrels to get the nuts out of their shells, and determine whether a nut is good or bad and has to be thrown in the garbage chute. Veruca, upon seeing the squirrels, demands that her father gift her one, but Wonka claims they aren't for sale, so she decides to try and grab one herself, which proves to be a big mistake as the squirrels all attack and drag her into the garbage chute, forcing her father to head down as well to try and help her out, but he ultimately ends up being bumped in as well by a single squirrel while the Oompa Loompas sing yet another song, with this one on the importance of good parenting. Continuing on with the tour again, as the group hops on the factory's elevator that not only goes up and down, but every other way you can think of. And during their travel all across the factory, Mike claims that most of the stuff in this place is completely pointless, and that all this candy is a waste of time, which prompts another flashback for Willy of when he'd proposed the idea of becoming a chocolatier to his father, who refused to allow it. So Willy decided to run away from home and began building his chocolate empire without it. The group's elevator trip then eventually ends when they arrive at the television room, used to test Wonka's latest and greatest invention, television chocolate, which he hopes he can one day use to send an actual bar of chocolate through the television to be eaten. Mike's skeptical this could actually ever work though, so Wonka conducts an experiment right in front of them that proves to be a success, prompting Mike to then jump onto the machine and use it to teleport himself, which again works but results in him becoming extremely small. So after the Oompa Loompas sing one last song about the importance of monitoring your kid's TV time, Wonka sends him with his father to be put into the taffy puller so he can be elongated. With all the other kids having failed to complete the tour of his factory, Wonka, upon realizing Charlie's the only child left, announces that he's won the grand prize, before traveling up and out of the building in the elevator, all the way down and crashing into Charlie's home, where he then finally reveals what Charlie's actually won, and it turns out to be his entire factory, explaining that a few months ago, he noticed a gray hair during a semi-annual haircut, and this made him realize that he must find an heir. So he sent out the golden tickets and invited 5 children to the factory, with the plan of naming the least rotten of them the factory's co-owner. Charlie's elated by this revelation and prepares to move him and his family to their new home, but Wonka reveals that only he can join him at the factory, and not his family, claiming that a chocolatier has to run free and solo. So Charlie chooses to instead turn down his offer, refusing to give up his family for anything. Shocked Wonka then returns to his factory alone and is left feeling pretty terrible, which in turn results in his next few candy releases tasting terrible. So after coming to terms with this, thanks to a therapy session with one of the Oompa Loompas, he goes to find Charlie, hoping he can help him figure out a way to feel better. And Charlie says that whenever he feels down, his family's always able to cheer him up. Wonka hates the whole idea of family though, believing that parents are not conducive to a creative atmosphere. But Charlie explains that they're usually just trying to protect them out of love, and encourages him to reconnect with his own family. So Wonka decides to do just that, with Charlie by his side, and the two travel in Wonka's elevator to his father's home, inside of which we see that Wilbur's actually been keeping up with and appears to have great admiration for Willy's work, with him having framed all of Willy's biggest accomplishments. And Charlie's words are soon proven true, as the two Wonkas share a loving embrace. So with Willy now no longer opposed to being surrounded by family, he repeats his offer to Charlie, although this time with the addition of his family joining them. And so they all move into an exact model of the Buckets' home, built within the factory's chocolate room, in which they share a family dinner as the movie ends. And that was our recap of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and also let us know down in the comments below which Wonka film is your favorite. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.